and welcome everybody. This presentation we had set up really was relapse prevention for the people in recovery, but because I'll tailor it also for the family, and I'll talk more about myself later. But in light of the way we start the meeting, usually we have an icebreaker, and I'll just ask, and I'm sure they know this question. There were 5 frogs on the side of a pond. Yeah, 4 decided to jump. How many were left on the side of the pond? The person who woke up earliest can answer, or the one who has the longest hair.
Pardon the question.
Did you hear the question?
Pardon.
5 frogs were on the side of a pond, on a rock on the side of a pond. 4 decided to jump. How many were left on the rock? The one with the longest hair? Because it's not me, clearly. Anyone can go?
I think all the 5 were left on the side of the.
Why? Because
they just decided. They just decided they didn't jump.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's a correct answer. And actually, it can. There are many life lessons, even recovery lessons around there, in terms of the difference between decision and action. The decision may not make a difference, however great a decision it is, until we act on it. So that's the only lesson about this. So I'll share the screen, but and also just a disclaimer, I'll just share, I might not follow the slides the way we prepared with, or rather, Penina. Slideshow. And you feel free to ask questions at the end, even during. Okay, we'll leave. There'll be a Q&A, and there'll be a Q&A. And let's see. So we'll talk about relapse, and especially for family members, but also for people who are embarking on a journey of recovery. The sad, or unfortunate truth of a fortunate fact is that relapse is always a possibility in the journey of recovery. And what does it mean? What does a relapse mean? It means that it's an isolated or complete return to addictive behavior. So if one is an alcohol addict, it might mean getting back to drinking and actually getting the same kind of damages and stuff that was happening before they initially stopped. But when it's isolated, we don't call it relapse. It's actually a lapse. And this could be just one drink because either life happened, and then they're able to come back. And a relapse could be, getting completely back into the old way of life. Is this a necessary topic to speak about? What do you think? Can one person? Can anybody just jump in and say, is this a necessary? Do you think it's a very necessary topic to talk about? Especially given that statistic. Connie, are you speaking? Maybe you're muted.
I think it's an important topic because part of our worry is what happens after they leave the place. So we would like to know whether it is permanent. We are worried if there is such a case, how it's going to affect him and also us. So I think it's a good topic to discuss.
Okay. Yes, and when we say it's a possibility, we are not saying it's going to be a fact. Even with these statistics, even at 90% of those who try to abstain having at least one relapse, it means there's a 10% possibility of not having a relapse and still engaging in useful recovery. And here is where we are saying it's sometimes called a sleep. And as we engage into the type of relapses, is that we want you to see that it's also a process. Just like getting into the addiction was a process, getting into a relapse is not a one-off. It's especially having come from rehab, because in rehab, there's a lot of information the clients are provided with. There's a lot of work they actually engage with. There's a lot of, so it's not, they don't come, they don't come out of the rehab with, not knowing. But there are some triggers. There are some triggers that may precede a relapse. Because confronting one's addiction gets them to see the impact of, their drinking, their using. It gets them to see the impact on their relationships, significant relationship with family, with self, and even with God. And generally in their place in the community, whether it's at the workplace, whether it's in the extended family. So there'll be an extent of blaming others. They might say that if somebody will come and tell me, for instance, as a client says, my parents were not there for me. Or they might feel a sense of regret and shame because of the lost opportunities, the lost, the kind of damages they've created, that they've had. And there may be at times a lack of acceptance or even awareness of the damages of one addiction, because the damages they might feel that, especially, like in my experience in working with rehabs, come January, there's kind of a burst of inquiries into rehab, about, the services that rehabs offer. And why? Because of some of the damages that happened during the Christmas holidays. And when my experience has been at times when we speak to some of these, the people who are being looked for a place in rehab, they say, but I'm not the only one who drank over Christmas. Many other people did. What tends to happen, yes, over the holidays, is that people overindulge, whether they're addict and other people. And so the damages in January are very many. But now follow through to, say, around March. Yeah, the family come back, they make another inquiry, and they say, oh, our person is still continuing. Now, this person does not have the same excuse he or she had in January, where even so-and-so, didn't you see even so-and-so knocked a car? Because that so-and-so maybe drank only at that time in December. And so in March, they're left alone. So what's their excuse? So they're not aware about the damages. Yes, I will tailor this presentation mainly for the family, because I know my friends and at the center, we deal with these conversations every day, don't we? Then a fear of relapse can be a trigger, to the actual relapse. That perhaps because it's feeding on the feelings of regret and shame, I could be so afraid of relapse that I don't do what I need to do to avoid it. Yeah, I get to just be so afraid and I forget to do what I need to do to stay sober. And then it happens. And then looking at what recovery entails, because again, we talk about this every day, I'm making amends to self, to another, or trying to catch up either with my education, on my work. And there can be a sense of despair. And it looks like it's a lot of work. engage, and that can again breed a sense of worry, a sense of fear, a sense of hopelessness. And the question they would ask is, so what's the point? What's the point of doing this? If look at all these damages, I don't see myself getting sorted. So what would be the point? And this is a good place, in terms of just information. And then we said relapse is also a process. So it's like a stone rolling down a hill. And, in physics, which I was not good at, I'm told that, there's increased acceleration as the stone is rolling down the hill. So it builds a momentum. By the time it gets to the ground, there's all these damages, even including the previous ones before the recovery process or the rehabilitation, and then now new ones. But it's important, I think it's important to know, to understand that even as we accept that relapse is a possibility, to understand what the warning signs are. Now, all at Fountain of Hope we have is 90 days. It sounds like a long time to the people in there, for sure. It feels like 90 months or even for some 90 years. Yeah. But it's really a short time to work on even building a foundation, let alone, it sounds like, a foundation of a life of contented recovery. But we do what we can with, even great results. And ours is, to prepare people onto the recovery journey, onto the healing journey. And even this relapse prevention is also sessions that we have before they leave the center. But it's important to recognize the warning signs. Why? Because they're going out to a world that doesn't change much because you are in rehab. Going out to a world that if one is an alcohol addict and their preferred drug of choice was, say, Kenya Breweries products, Kenya Breweries is not going to change their way of operating. So what does one do? They will still advertise, they will still put big billboards. Yesterday was International Men's Day. I saw memes of, Tusker saying they want you to be a man, and the beer was B-E-E-R, man, be a man. So you can imagine what a recovering alcoholic addict might feel on an International Men's Day watching a Tusker advert on that day. They might feel left out, or might feel, so just for today, because I want to be a man, I can start today and, I can have a drink today and then maybe tomorrow, since it will not be International Men's Day, I proceed. So it's also important, and this is what we want to highlight today, that there are stages of relapse. And the main ones we identify in psychology would be, and in addiction counseling, is they're emotional, mental, and physical. And why we divide it into three is because we believe that human beings generally, not just addicts, operate on a kind of a triangle of thoughts, feelings, and behavior. So that thoughts influence what we feel, and what we feel influence what we do. And then it becomes a cycle, because what we do then gives birth to new thoughts and then new behavior. So we have to look at all three levels of the human being. Yeah? Question? Okay. So with emotional relapse, it's not that one is thinking about using. Yeah, is that yes, do remember, because we don't forget where our, about our last relapse or the last incident that got us into rehab. But we think about everything, everything about just our life generally, everything. But and then at times, because we're not able to, or they're not able to harness, the thoughts and say, okay, this is just thoughts. This is just, it's just a thought, but there's different emotions that follow the thoughts, that I'm thinking about, and let's see whether it will develop. So the emotional, we are talking about emotional relapse. So emotional relapse is about what I feel. It's mainly about what I'm experiencing, emotionally. And part of it could be regret. It could be even positive kind of emotions, even though emotions are generally neutral, whether they are, sadness or joy. They are just joyful emotions. But emotions can set us up for relapse down the road. So there could be a sense of regret. There could be a sense of even, a declaration that because of what happened, I'm not going to let it happen again. Like I said, I'll just jump some of these slides. And then because of what we are feeling, and we are only learning, because like I said, 90 days may not be a long enough time to get to understand oneself, whether or not you're an addict, that we need all of our life to understand ourselves. I think that we can be in agreement. Regardless of your age today, we can't say we are 100%, we know ourselves 100%. So there's a return to denial. And by denial here, and family members at times may not understand this phenomenon of denial. Somebody has come home, either say they drove and they had an accident, for instance. I like giving this example. And it was raining at 3, they've come, they were driving, they had an accident, it was raining. So they come and say, no, it was a road that was slippery. But if you were to tell them, can we go back to that accident spot and see how many cars used that place and how many accidents occurred? Chances are you might find theirs was the only car. And not because it was raining, not because the road was slippery, even though those are risks, to an accident, but also because there was a loss of judgment because of being drunk. So that denial is an inability to see the reality. It's not a refusal. And a lot of times, family relate to the person in denial as if they're refusing, to see the obvious. At times, really what the addict is saying is that they really can't see the obvious. And this is where now we want to empower the family members. When you understand the signs, it's not so that you can crucify the person, but really help and support, and how, so that they even, they'll start. Another sign of emotional relapse is that, again, because they are coming from only 90 days, which will set them up for the next 60, 70 years of their life, one needs to understand that change behavior takes time. Because yes, they may have changed behavior in rehab, but that's not the familiar environment. The familiar environment is back in society. It could be at home, it could be at work, it could be even, just hanging out with friends. And how do you, one of the things that people could do, they could be familiar behavior, and you want to mention it, and they say, wewe unanirudisha nyuma. Ama wewe you're picking up things from the past. Ama because I'm just thinking about that. Remember these stages, because I'll talk about emotional, mental, and physical. They don't work in isolation also. That you can't have signs of emotional relapse and perhaps there's an absence of the signs of the mental relapse. So we'll look at it in totality. Dealing with everyday ordinary problems will become overwhelmed with ordinary problems, because family will say, you umerudi, so endelea, now deliver, now that you're back. So what to the family may look like ordinary issues, of even like managing time, managing leisure, level pleasure, managing fun, managing, saying, oh, next week is your cousin's wedding, let's go. Let's go. And perhaps they'll be uncomfortable being around people. And then if they refuse to go, you think they're being stubborn, but perhaps, for you, the family member, that would be an ordinary issue, but it could become overwhelming and they don't know what to do. So one of the times of a recovering alcoholic, there are times they, even if it's going back to school, you might feel that, I need to catch up with my studies, and I can't given the little time I have. And then you feel overwhelmed, and because I don't want to feel overwhelmed, I don't want to feel sad, I want to escape from this feeling, I think about using. And because I still have reminder of what the things we were taught in rehab, I know that that's not an option to go back to, but I get overwhelmed and I don't know what to do. And that's how it feeds into now, what can one do? What can we then do given those thoughts? Because those thoughts might be unavoidable. Yeah. And so the things we would need to do is, we expose them to recovery programs, where we ask them go to AA and Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. And now with the internet, there's so much resource. And also we ask the family members to understand. Yeah, and that, or even be aware. And that's why I like, this, for instance, this program, the Family Day, because then you can get to even know us, so that if one has a concern, you can reach out to us before reaching out to the person, to your significant other, where you can say, because I've known people where, and I was telling them during the week, there are times, family members will hug you when you've come from, from work, and you're wondering, oh, okay, this nice, public display of affection is very nice. But at times the family members are hugging to smell your breath. So I'm inviting the family members not to do that. If you're going to get a public display of affection, give affection, be affectionate, because we need it, and if there's an issue of trust, remember it will take time. It was a process to get there. It will be a process to learn, to earn, and to give, to trust. And recovery is really a day at a time. But the recovery program, and this is where we say, prioritize, and family members can help the addict to prioritize that recovery program, because this is where I know I'm saying they, I'll say why, but they get a space to understand themselves, to understand why they got where they are, and to avoid returning to what we call stinking thinking. And as we give even this conversation today, we talk about, why we are saying about recognizing the signs is so that you can be a real support to the people in your lives. And some of the, a summary of, the signs of emotional relapse, isolating. And isolating here is not all bad, because sometimes they will need time to themselves. Allow them that. There'll be a sense of irritability. Now, irritability is an aspect of addiction. Now, the thing is this one is tricky, because, we know the buttons to be, that can be pressed, and so irritability is not to sink at that level, the addict needs to be aware about that irritability. And we say, irritability, discontent, and restlessness. Those are attributes of addiction. So when the addict is, even for you, when you're irritable, reach out and just acknowledge the irritability, that I'm feeling, that either it's a weekend, I don't have money, I'm broke, and and I don't want to be with myself. That's a way to just share that as it is. They can focus on others who either they were classmates and they seem to have developed or gone ahead of them, and that will again breed regret and a sense of shame. And focusing on others means defocusing on self. Bottling up emotions, especially men. We are in this society that doesn't allow us a healthy relationship to our emotions, except maybe to, anger and lust, men. But we want to be allowed to feel sad. We want to be allowed to feel excited. The only part, if you watch men behaving in a stadium or when we're watching a football match, can you imagine allowing those emotions to be at home outside of a football match? Because watu wanasema wacha utoto, but when they're in a football match, it's understandable. And not going to meetings is also, and why meetings? Meetings, we talk about the Alcoholics Anonymous meetings that we expose, the way, the 12-step meeting. We talk about the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. Now, meetings is a fellowship of equals, a fellowship of people who've been there, done that. And it's a safe space for addicts to express themselves to other addicts. It's not a place for experts. It's not a place to even look good. It's a place for people to learn to be themselves. And initially we talk about attending 90 meetings in 90 days after they leave the 90 meetings, 90 days in rehab. Self-care generally is because addiction is also an absence of self-care, because they prioritized, running away from self. So the antidote to running away from self is coming back to self and learning how to do self-care, so that sleep, diet, exercise, having fun, and those need to be prioritized and understood now, with what is healthy fun for a recovering alcoholic, because maybe some of it was just in bars and, play and parties. And so in terms of diet, we're talking about the basic. In fact, then there's acronym that's used, HALT, H-A-L-T. It sounds so basic, but it's a life saver, where we talk about hungry, watch out for being hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. That if you're hungry, what addicts will do is use, an alcoholic will drink, not eat. When they're angry, they may just create an outburst or go drink and then bring an outburst. So if somebody is angry, they need to learn to acknowledge the anger, learn to share about the anger appropriately, maybe not even to the person who's they're angry at. And when they're lonely, call out, reach out, because again, a feeling of loneliness for an addict feels abnormal. And when they're tired, rest. Even though, I remember an advert for today, maybe hopefully I'm not creating cravings here, but where baada ya kazi kunywa, jiburudisha, na that was the slogan for Tusker a long time ago. That it was so when they're tired, learn to rest. Allow your people to rest. Even like yesterday, this week when one of the clients was going, I took him through, what's your plan for Saturday? Just to get to see what he could do the whole day. Then the next stage of relapse is mental relapse. Here we are saying it's what they're thinking about, because the emotion is what they're feeling. But what's going on in the mind? And this is where we are saying about the thoughts of, is this too much? Am I able to sort myself out? Or even minimizing the damage. We could say that, oh, but it wasn't that bad, so I don't even need to go to AA. So you think yourself out of recovery and into a drink. So we need to be aware of our thoughts. And one of the simple ways of just dealing with the thoughts first is self-talk. This is what I'm thinking. And we can also go into journaling. And also for family members, you could ask, tell me what you're thinking, and just not tell them what they could think differently, because it's their thoughts, it's their mind, isn't it? So it's just to, and just be there to listen. Listening is an action in itself, so you may not need to respond. And again, another, elevated stress, because returning to real world, we say in rehab, it's difficult to get a drink, but when you leave, it's difficult to get to a meeting. It's difficult because those are things I have to do myself. So the real world can trigger mood swings. And because we are only getting aware of who we are as addicts, as recovering alcoholics, we need to be aware about the mood swings and the family members too, and for the family members, they might feel, I know this feeling. I know what happened last time. Now, I know the addicts are all, the clients are often told about kujita kamkutano. Today, my request, new family members kujitanga kamkutano before they react to familiar behavior that they see in their significant other. And then acknowledging that stress, at times we only knew one way of dealing with stress was acting out and attacking maybe those people in our lives, and then using and then coming to make it worse. So it's important to be aware of our mood swings, because and mood swings, we are not just saying here about negative feelings, because even positive, you may get, like, for instance, a good result, you pass your exams finally, and you don't know what to do with yourself, because I've gotten this great result, I got an A, and so I need to be aware that moment of that positive feeling should be dealt with just in that moment. I don't. So we talk again about people, places, and things. You might hear about PPT, and the onset of we talk about admitting and saying that we are powerless about people, places, and things. We are powerless about the kind of family we come from, the family backgrounds we come from. We are powerless about where we are. We are powerless about the situation in your life. Now, remember, when I say powerless, this does not mean helpless. It just means, and especially when we're talking about the drug of choice, it just means if I'm powerless over alcohol, it means I can never think about using alcohol appropriately and overcoming. If I'm powerless about my family background, for all I know, I'm yet to meet anybody who wrote an application letter to be born in the family they were born in. Yeah. So that means that if I'm powerless about the kind of family background I was born in, what the antidote for that is to accept. First, to admit I was born in this family background. I had nothing, I didn't have much say in what, and I'm here now. What do I do? What's the thing I need to do to be here now in a way that works for me and works for those people? Minimizing past consequences. We have had losses and damages in our using days, in our drinking days, so that it's all clear. Family might come and say, you're all forgiven, it's all good. The thing is, even though we may not be responsible for the addiction, we're still responsible for correcting the things that happen when we're drinking. There are times, especially in this day of football in the clubs, wanting to go to watch your favorite team in the pub. Or saying, I can always use a non-alcoholic wine. Or saying that wine is good for the heart, and the thing is that we didn't have it wasn't a heart problem, it was a drinking problem that was there. lying to self and others, saying maybe I'm too young, I could always start over, or I'm too old, it's useless. And finding opportunities not to use and not getting caught. And the thing is, as long as this one is classic for many addicts, because there are times they say, as long as nobody finds out, I'm cool, I'm okay. Now, the problem with this is that they will find out, and who got to admit and accept the addiction. And we come from the school of thought where we say addiction is treatable but not curable. Yeah. There's a reason for this, because we've seen relapses. We've seen people relapse, and they go back to either worse than where they left off or back to where they left off. So the evidence and even the research is out there that says, yes, it's treatable but not, so we talk about recovery a day at a time. Until when? Until when we are no longer here. And the antidote, and we teach, all this, about asking for help. Talking about cravings is not an act of weakness. Saying I'm actually, thinking of going just to sit in my old joint, and without having to go sit in your old joint. And the thing is, addiction, because we say it's not curable, it means it's still alive. Somewhere here, out there, it's alive. So it's waiting. It's still waiting out there. But again, the thing we'll talk about the antidote to all that. Then now we come to physical relapse. Physical relapse is often the last thing that happens. However, especially with family members, it's the first thing they see. They did not realize about the emotional and the mental. The first physical relapse is what they see, and they wonder, Allah, umerudia tena? Si tuliongea hii maneno, things like that. And why we are saying it's important to know about physical relapse now before it happens is that you can prepare or to avoid it way before it actually happens. So we say that when somebody actually picks up a drink, when somebody who's in recovery picks up a drink, the drink it didn't happen. All those thoughts and behavior and the mental relapse and the emotional relapse did not happen at that point of the drink. It happened way, way before. And that's why we are saying, what do I need to do way before to avoid this? So in fact, this one is the most obvious, and yes, there's still things we can do either to avoid or to mitigate the damages. And with a physical relapse, it's either, to get the person out of that situation so that it's a lapse or a slip, and encourage them to get back onto the recovery wagon, rather than say, "Oi, it's over. We are back to where we started." No, it's just it's an opportunity still. I mean, there's still opportunity for rescuing the person. The stages of recovery, again, I was thinking about that again, family may have a lot of expectations, especially when the person comes out, and, get them to pay back almost immediately. I want you to go back to work. I want you to go get married. I want you to get another baby, things like that. Now we say, because recovery has stages, let's take things pole pole. The first 1 or 2 years of recovery should honestly be spent focusing on the recovery. Continue doing the things you were doing before, like if you're working, stay at work. And yes, I know the economy can be crazy, so somebody if is not working, they'll need to look for work and everything, but not at the expense of recovery. And with family, as much as we're asking the recovering addict or recovering alcohol addict to be patient and persistent in their own recovery journey, we're also inviting the family members into this journey, where we are saying, be patient with your person. to understand that there are stages that they need. We are talking about them changing their lives. We are telling them to being honest, because addiction is, for it to thrive, it requires dishonesty. So coming into a world of recovery, we are talking about honesty. Now, this is new. This is new. And family members understanding that addicts may not be willing to ask for help. One, because they might not even know what kind of help they need. Or two, the sign of, I'm a grown man, I shouldn't be asking for this kind of help. Learn how to offer that help. You can learn by also doing a bit of self-work here, and by asking self, what could I have done? Not blame. What could I have done to contribute to the way things are? No, I'm not asking to blame yourselves. What could I have done to contribute to the way things are? Have an honest conversation with self. Have an honest conversation, even with, they're also, and even as you practice, we encourage them to practice self-care, similarly, this is also what we are asking. And we also talk about, life on life terms. What are some of the things people need to do so that they can do life the way it's, so like now we're saying, maybe somebody will insist, go get a job so that you can contribute to the expenses. Maybe a job will help with structure. Maybe a job will help with bringing daily routine. Forget about the contributing back, maybe the funding. Maybe a job will help with dealing with the 24 hours, but also, so what we're talking about, and these are the things we bring back, we bring, things about structure, about daily routine, sleeping regularly, having, even, personal, and then when you share rooms, for instance, maybe people have not shared room for long, or without, a significant other, but, this is where now we learn how to be responsible for ourselves and for others. What to do when thinking of a relapse? Because there are times we are not thinking of it as a relapse. They're not thinking about it as a relapse. They're thinking of it as a gateway to something, or an escape from something. Yeah. It's to play, is to play the tape to the end. Okay, I come from the generation where we played tapes, so I don't know whether playing the CD to the end is the same, but we played tapes. So you see in your mind, you can actually play, what it would look like having another drink or another puff or another, another pill, whatever your drug of choice is or behavior of choice. Oh yeah, another thing is that about relapse prevention, watch for engaging in other addictive behaviors aside from your drug of choice. That somebody might say, look, mine was alcohol. Then they start working and they stay at work for very long and they think they're paying back to society what they missed out. Overwork. In fact, workaholism is what we call the respected addiction. People glorify it. Unfortunately, for recovering addicts or for alcoholics and addicts, it's still an access to relapse. Going to the gym for longer than maybe even 90, in fact, it's told if you stay in a gym for longer than 90 minutes, you're overdoing it. Going to church, morning glory, church, like we were told yesterday, you're there in the morning glory, you're there in the lunchtime service, you're in the evening service, then you're doing your keshas. I mean, engaging in those organizations is fine. But again, let's do it with moderation because we are recovering to be in life fully. So watch out for cross addiction. That you may start overeating and then saying, but it's only food, there's no problem. Or even under eating. And so it's important to understand. And nowadays, the beauty of Google and the internet is that all these resources are available at our fingertips. So as So again, prevention strategies, we are talking about changing your life. It's a change of life. Sometimes you may not be able to move from the neighborhood you are in, but you still can change some aspects about that neighborhood, the route you used to work, the route you used to go jogging, being completely honest. And we cannot over reiterate this. Ask for help. Ask for help. Practice self-care. Don't bend the rules. And by this, what we mean generally, look at some of the things as you know yourself that could sabotage your recovery. So that if we're talking about a life of honesty, there are things out there in the workplace or out there that may involve not following, the law, for instance. You might think, what does the law have to do with my recovery? You might think nothing. But let's follow the law, for instance, as an example, because somehow it is connected with, with my being, being completely honest. Like we said, the summary, that it happens gradually, just like getting into addiction was a process, getting into a relapse is also a process. Look for early signs. Self-care is key. Ask for help, and remember, you're not alone. Thank you. Thank you so much. And that will be in the end of that particular presentation. Obviously, this is a conversation that can go, can have even different parts. But I would want to hear from the family members. What do you think you can do to support your significant, knowing your own situations? How do you think you can support your significant other in relapse prevention and generally and specifically in their recovery? And then everybody, please just say one word, just one word of what your takeout from today's session is. And then, or maybe questions first, then how you think you can support your recovery. Thank you. Asanteni.